trial, my wife's lawyer burst out laughing when I arrived at the courthouse wearing a $12 shirt. Your Honor, he doesn't even have enough to pay for our daughter's tuition. The judge asked me to state my full name for the record. As soon as I said my name, her face turned pale. The fluorescent lights in courtroom 4B hummed steadily overhead. I had been staring straight ahead for 20 minutes, trying to keep my cool while my wife's lawyer pretended to examine my clothes. Your Honor, I would like to submit to the record exhibit number 14, Mr. Lawson's last 3 pay stubs from his job ad. Let's see. He flipped through his papers with exaggerated slowness. Ah, yes, Jenkins Auto Repair, $2,947 a month before taxes. He let that number float in the air like a bad smell. My client, Courtney Lawson, currently earns $14,500 a month as a senior marketing director at Horizon Marketing. Their daughter, Brooke, attends Greenwood Academy. Annual tuition, $38,000. Mr. Lawson's annual income would not even cover half of that amount. I sat at the defense table in my blue button-down shirt from Walmart, on clearance for $12.97, and said nothing. My lawyer, a young court-appointed attorney named Joshua Ramirez, who had been assigned to me 3 weeks earlier, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Your Honor, Courtney's lawyer continued, we are not asking for anything unreasonable. Primary custody for my client, supervised visits for Mr. Lawson twice a month, and child support calculated on the standard percentage of his income. He paused for dramatic effect, which, given his financial situation, would amount to about $4 a month. Someone snickered in the gallery. I did not turn around to look. I knew it was Courtney's mother, Linda Walsh, a woman who had spent the last 9 years reminding me that her daughter had married down. Mr. Lawson. I looked up. Judge Margaret Donovan was observing me over her reading glasses. In her 50s, with silver hair pulled back into a tight bun, she had the kind of face that knew all the tricks of the trade and was not impressed by any of them. Yes, Your Honor. You have been very quiet during these proceedings. Do you have anything to say in response to the opposing counsel's description of your financial situation? I glanced at Joshua. He gave me a small nod. We had discussed this. No, Your Honor, not at this time. Courtney's lawyer laughed. He actually laughed, right there in the middle of the hearing. Your Honor, I think Mr. Lawson's silence speaks volumes. He knows he cannot provide for his daughter. He knows. Counselor Kensington, Judge Donovan's voice cut like a blade. I did not ask for your commentary. I asked Mr. Lawson a question, and he answered it. Bradley Kensington, a partner at Morrison and Kensington making $650 an hour, had the decency to look slightly reprimanded. My apologies, Your Honor. Judge Donovan shuffled some papers. Before we move to closing arguments, I need to confirm some details for the record. She looked at me again. Mr. Lawson, please state your full legal name. I took a deep breath. This was the moment. Derek James Lawson. The name echoed in the silence of the courtroom. Judge Donovan's pen stopped moving. She slowly looked up at me, and I saw the color drain from her face like water emptying from a sink. I beg your pardon, she said, her voice suddenly cautious. Could you repeat that? Derek James Lawson, Your Honor. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she turned to her clerk, a young redhead with nervous hands, and whispered something I could not hear. The clerk's eyes widened. She stood up so fast her chair scraped across the floor, and she rushed toward the door behind the judge's bench, her heels clicking frantically. Bradley Kensington frowned. Your Honor, is there a problem? Judge Donovan did not answer. She was still looking at me, but her expression had completely changed. The cold authority was gone. In its place was something that had not been directed at me in a very long time. Fear. Courtney leaned toward her lawyer, whispering urgently. I caught snippets. What is going on? Why is she reacting like that? The side door opened. 2 men walked into the courtroom. They wore dark suits and moved with the efficiency of people who do this every day. Federal marshals. I recognized the badges on their belts. They walked straight to the plaintiff's table, toward Courtney. Courtney Elizabeth Lawson? The first marshal said. My wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, looked up at them in confusion. Yes? What is this? I am in the middle of a custody hearing. The marshal pulled out a document. Mrs. Lawson, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, theft of government funds, and obstruction of justice. The courtroom exploded. Courtney let out a cry of shock and denial. What? No, this is crazy. I did not do anything. Bradley Kensington was on his feet. This is outrageous. Your Honor, my client is in the middle of legal proceedings. Whatever this is, it can wait. It cannot wait, Counselor. The second marshal was already moving behind Courtney, the handcuffs catching the fluorescent light. This warrant was signed by a federal judge 2 hours ago. Your client has the right to remain silent. Anything she says can and will be used against her in a court of law. Derek, Courtney's eyes found mine through the chaos. Her mascara was already running down her cheeks, her carefully applied makeup dissolving under the weight of her panic. Derek, what did you do? What did you do? I did not answer. I just sat there in my $12.97 Walmart shirt and watched the woman who had spent the last 18 months telling me I was a nobody get escorted out of a courtroom in handcuffs. My name is Derek James Lawson. Most people call me Derek. 3 years ago, I was a lead investigator for the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, of the Treasury Department. I had a security clearance, a 6-figure salary, and access to information that could bring down multinational corporations and send executives to prison. Then I gave it all up. I turned my back on all of it. I became a mechanic in a small garage in the Northern Virginia suburbs. Not out of obligation, but because I was hunting someone. And today, after 1,027 days of playing the fool, letting my wife and her family believe I was nothing but a loser, enduring every insult and humiliation they could throw at me. Today, the trap finally sprang shut. Let me take you back to where it all really started. September of 2020, and I was at the peak of my career. 15 years at FinCEN, promoted to lead investigator in the complex financial crimes division. My job was to track the money, follow the threads of fraud, embezzlement, and corruption through shell companies and offshore accounts. I was good, more than good. I had helped build cases that sent 3 hedge fund managers, a state senator, and the chief financial officer of a Fortune 500 company behind bars. Courtney and I had been married for 6 years at the time. We met at a charity event in Washington. She worked in public relations for a nonprofit. I was representing the Treasury there at an interagency function. She was beautiful, confident, the kind of woman who made the room feel smaller the second she walked in. Brooke came along 2 years after the wedding. The day she was born, I held her in my arms and cried. This perfect little human being, half me and half the woman I loved. I swore to protect her forever. For 4 years, I thought we were happy. I was wrong. The first sign should have been the job change. Courtney left her position for Horizon Marketing, a highly exclusive marketing agency that paid her almost triple her previous salary. The chief executive officer, a man named Philip Harrington, had recruited her personally. It is an incredible opportunity, she told me over dinner. Philip thinks I have executive potential. He wants to mentor me. I was happy for her, proud even. My wife, the rising star. I did not notice the late nights at first. My own hours were unpredictable. Financial crimes do not follow a standard 9 to 5 schedule. When Courtney started coming home at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, sometimes midnight, I assumed she was just working hard. I did not notice the new clothes much either. Not really. She had always liked nice things, and now she could afford them. The designer bags, the overpriced shoes. I figured she was treating herself. What I did notice was the distance. We stopped talking about our days, stopped eating dinner together, stopped doing anything that made us feel like partners. Brooke became the only link between us. We orbited around her like 2 planets that had forgotten they were supposed to share the same sun. You are imagining things, Courtney said when I tried to bring it up. I'm just stressed. The job is demanding, and we barely see each other anymore. So maybe you should work a little less instead of blaming me for working more. The arguments started after that. Small ones at first, then bigger ones. Every conversation became a battlefield. Every question I asked was perceived as controlling. Every concern I raised was paranoia. In October of 2021, I came home early from a conference in New York. My flight had been canceled due to the weather, and I managed to catch an earlier one. I discovered Courtney and Philip Harrington together in our bedroom in a compromising situation that left no doubt about the inappropriate relationship. The classic nature of the situation almost made me laugh. The husband coming home unexpectedly, the wife rushing to gather her things, The other man with silver hair reeking of overpriced cologne, trying to maintain his dignity. Courtney, this is not what I thought our marriage was. Philip Harrington stepped forward, hands raised as if trying to calm a wild animal. Derek, let us all take a deep breath. These things happen. Adults can discuss this rationally. I looked at him, really looked at him. I had been doing this job for 15 years. I knew how to read people, their micro-expressions, their tics, the tiny movements that revealed what they were really thinking. And in that moment, looking at Philip Harrington, I saw something that went far beyond simple betrayal. Arrogance. The absolute certainty that he was untouchable. Get out of my house, I said evenly. Now. Philip left. Courtney followed him to the door, whispering something I could not hear. When she came back, her expression had changed. The guilt was still there, but underneath lurked something harder, more calculating. I want a divorce, she said. All right. She blinked. She had expected me to fight, to beg her, to give her some kind of leverage. All right. That is all you have to say. What do you want me to say, Courtney? Our marriage is over. She crossed her arms. I want the house. I want primary custody of Brooke, and I want you to understand that Philip has very good lawyers. I do not doubt it. You are not going to fight me on this. I thought of Brooke, of the life we had built, of all the hours spent away from home tracking down criminals, thinking I was making a difference. And I thought back to Philip Harrington's face, to that absolute confidence. Something clicked in my investigator's brain, a pattern I had seen in dozens of cases. No, I said slowly. I am not going to fight you. Not yet, anyway. That night, after Courtney left to sleep at a friend's place, almost certainly Philip's penthouse, I sat in my office and started digging. Horizon Marketing had always seemed odd to me. A small marketing agency that somehow landed contracts with major corporations and government agencies. A chief executive officer who lived like a billionaire despite running a company of only 40 employees. A client list that included defense contractors, pharmaceutical companies, and 3 different federal agencies. It took me 2 hours to find the first anomaly. It took me 2 weeks to understand the scale of what I was looking at. Philip Harrington was not just running a marketing agency. He was running a money laundering operation, and my wife was right in the middle of it. I should have reported it immediately. That is what protocol demanded. I was a federal investigator uncovering potential financial crimes. The correct procedure was to document everything, hand the file over to my superiors, and let the system run its course. But there was a problem. Philip Harrington was connected, seriously connected. His client list included people with the power to make investigations disappear, to transfer troublesome agents, to bury evidence, to ensure that certain names never appeared in certain reports. I had seen it happen before. Good cases, solid evidence, witnesses ready to testify. All of it vanishing because someone made a phone call to someone else who owed them a favor. If I reported it through normal channels, there was a very high chance Philip would find out. And if Philip found out, the evidence would disappear. Worse, my daughter was living in a house with a man heading a criminal enterprise. If I moved too fast, if I spooked him, Brooke risked getting caught in the middle. So I made a decision that would cost me everything, only to eventually give it all back to me. I went to see the only person I trusted absolutely. Kenneth Mitchell, my mentor at FinCEN. 63 years old, 3 years away from retirement, and the most incorruptible man I had ever known. We met at a diner in Arlington, the kind of place where no one pays attention to 2 men in suits talking in low voices. Are you sure about this? Kenneth asked after I laid it all out for him. I have traced $47 million moving through Horizon Marketing in the last 18 months alone. Shell companies in Delaware, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, fake consulting invoices for entities that do not exist. And that is just what I could find with limited access. And your wife. I stirred my coffee. She approves the invoices, authorizes the payments. Does she really know what she is doing? I shook my head. I do not know. Maybe. Maybe she convinced herself it is just creative accounting. Or maybe she knows exactly what she is doing and does not care. I did not say any more. I did not want to consider that possibility. Kenneth stayed quiet for a long time. Then he said the thing I was dreading. You need to step back. Derek, you are too involved in this. The term conflict of interest does not even begin to describe the situation. I know. If anyone finds out you are investigating your own wife's employer. I know, Kenneth. I could lose my job, my clearance, everything. I looked him in the eyes. That is why I am asking for your help. Not as a supervisor, but as a friend. Kenneth watched me for a long time. I could see him weighing the pros and cons, calculating the risks. Finally, he nodded. What do you need? I need to disappear from FinCEN quietly. A reason that does not raise suspicions. You want to go undercover? Sort of, but not officially. I want to step down, resign, make it look like the divorce broke me, like I could not handle the stress. Derek, if I stay on as an investigator, Philip's people will be watching me. They monitor federal employees. I have seen the files. But if I am just a burnout government worker whose wife left him for a rich guy, nobody pays attention to the loser. And while you play the loser, I keep digging quietly, unofficially, to build a case so bulletproof, so comprehensive, that by the time I present it, no one will be able to make it disappear. Kenneth shook his head slowly. You are talking about years, Derek. Years of pretending to be something you are not. Years of watching your wife and daughter live with the man you are trying to bring to justice. I know what I am talking about. And if Courtney gets sole custody, if you lose access to Brooke completely, my jaw clenched. Then I lose access temporarily. But when this is over, when Philip Harrington is in prison and Courtney is facing charges, I will get her back for good. You are betting everything on this. No, I said, I am betting everything on the truth. The truth always comes out eventually, Kenneth. You taught me that. Sometimes it just needs a little push. 2 weeks later, I handed in my resignation to FinCEN, citing personal reasons related to my ongoing divorce. 3 months after that, I was working at Jenkins Auto Repair, making $17 an hour, living in a one-room apartment that smelled like mildew. The investigation had begun. I spent the next 2.5 years building my case in the shadows. By day, I fixed cars, changed brake pads, did oil changes, and repaired transmissions. My coworkers thought I was just a down-on-his-luck guy who hit rock bottom after his marriage failed. They would pat me on the back after work, buy me beers, tell me things would get better. By night, I became someone else. I had set up a secure workspace in my apartment. Encrypted hard drives, a virtual private network connection, burner phones. Everything was compartmentalized. Nothing was traceable. Kenneth fed me information when he could, but mostly I worked alone, following the money thread by thread. Philip Harrington's operation was bigger than I had initially realized. Horizon Marketing was just the tip of the iceberg. Underneath lay a network of shell companies spread across 12 countries, moving money for clients who could not afford to have their names associated with certain transactions. Drug cartels in Mexico, arms dealers in Eastern Europe, corrupt politicians on 3 continents. And at the center of it all, pulling the strings, was Philip Harrington, a man who had convinced the world he was just a successful marketing executive with a taste for fine wine. Courtney's role became clearer the deeper I dug. She was not just an unwitting extra. She actively managed the cash flows, created fake invoices, and coordinated operations with offshore banks. I could not say if she started out as an innocent pawn or if she knew from the beginning. But by the time I gathered enough evidence, she was way too involved to plead ignorance. The hardest part was not the investigation. The hardest part was Brooke. The custody agreement gave me weekends. 2 days, every other weekend. Courtney even fought that, arguing that my unstable lifestyle made me a bad influence. He works in an auto shop, I heard her tell the mediator. He lives in a studio. What kind of example is that for our daughter? I did not fight back. I could not afford to look like I had resources, like I had anything worth protecting. So I took what they gave me and made every minute count. Brooke was confused at first. She did not understand why Dad had left his important job, why he lived in a small apartment now, why he could not buy her the same things Mom and Philip could. Are you poor now, Dad? She asked me once during one of our weekends. I have everything I need, I told her. Philip says you gave up. He says you could not handle the pressure. It took all my energy not to react. People say a lot of things, sweetie. What matters is what is true. What is true? I hugged her tight. That I love you more than anything in the world. And that someday you will understand why Dad made these choices. She did not understand, not right then, but she would. By early 2024, I had everything I needed. 12 documented shell companies, 27 million traceable illegal transactions, bank statements, emails, recorded conversations. A web of evidence so comprehensive that even Philip Harrington's high-priced lawyers would not be able to talk their way out of it. But I had a problem. The timing. If I took this to the authorities now, Courtney would be arrested immediately, which meant Brooke would be placed in temporary custody, either with Courtney's parents who despised me or in foster care. I could not let that happen. I needed to control the moment of impact. Then Courtney handed me the perfect opportunity. The divorce had been finalized a year earlier, but she had never stopped trying to squeeze me. Child support modifications, custody adjustments, endless legal harassment designed to remind me of my place. In February of 2024, she filed a motion to reduce my visitation rights to once a month, supervised only, citing my inability to maintain an appropriate standard of living. Her real reason, Philip was getting impatient. He wanted to adopt Brooke, and my presence was an inconvenience. We have to respond to this, Joshua Ramirez told me when the motion dropped. He was fresh out of law school, assigned to my case because I qualified for legal aid. A good, sincere kid completely out of his depth. Do not respond, I said. What? Derek, if we do not respond, she wins by default. You could lose your daughter for good. Let her think she is winning. Let her ask for a sole custody hearing. Why would you want that? I looked at him. Because I need her in a courtroom on a specific date, in front of a specific judge. Joshua stared at me. What are you not telling me? A lot of things, but I need you to trust me. Trust you? Derek, I am your lawyer. You are supposed to tell me everything. Not this time. I put a hand on his shoulder. When this is all over, I will explain. But right now, I need you to do exactly what I tell you. Let her have her hearing. Let her think she has won. And when we walk into that courtroom, do not say a word unless I ask you to. This is crazy. Probably. Joshua looked at me for a long time. Whatever he saw on my face must have convinced him, because he finally nodded. All right, but if this blows up in your face, I am going to say I told you so, and that is fair game. The hearing was set for June 17th. I had 4 months to put the final pieces of the puzzle in place. The first piece was Kenneth Mitchell. He had retired from FinCEN 6 months earlier, but his contacts were still intact. More importantly, he had connections at the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Justice whom he could trust. People who would not tip off Philip Harrington. Is it ready? Kenneth asked when I met him at our usual diner. I slid a hard drive across the table. Everything. 3 years of investigation. Every transaction, every shell company, every name. Kenneth took the drive, turning it over in his hands. You know that once I hand this over, there is no going back. They are going to move fast. I know. Courtney is looking at serious time. Years. I know that too. And you're okay with that? She is Brooke's mother. I thought of my daughter, of the life she was living, surrounded by luxury bought with money from illegal activities, raised by a woman who had chosen wealth over integrity. Brooke deserves to know the truth, I said. About her mother, about Philip, about everything. She deserves the chance to grow up without lies. Kenneth nodded slowly. When do you want them to move in? June 17th. There is a custody hearing scheduled. I want Courtney arrested right in the middle of the courtroom. That is theatrical. That is justice. Kenneth smiled, a rare expression for him. You always did have a flair for the dramatic. The second piece was Judge Margaret Donovan. I had researched every family court judge in the district. Most of them were compromised in one way or another. Campaign contributions from law firms, social ties with wealthy donors. But Donovan was different. Her brother had been killed by a drunk driver 20 years ago. The driver was a hedge fund manager who had bought himself high-priced lawyers and walked away with probation. Donovan had dedicated her career to making sure money could never buy justice in her courtroom. More importantly, she had been a federal prosecutor before becoming a judge. She still had contacts at the Department of Justice. She would understand the weight of my name the second I said it. The third piece was the timing. The Federal Bureau of Investigation agreed to execute the arrest warrant at exactly 10:45 in the morning on June 17th, 15 minutes after the hearing started. Just enough time for Courtney and her lawyer to lay out their arrogance for the record, but short enough that they would not have time to feel the trap closing. Everything was in place. All I had to do was walk into that courtroom in my Walmart shirt and let them underestimate me one last time. On the morning of June 17th, I woke up at 5 in the morning. I could not sleep anyway. I showered, shaved, and put on the cheapest clothes I owned. The blue button-down shirt from Walmart, khaki pants bought at a thrift store, scuffed shoes that had seen better days. I looked at myself in the mirror. For 3 years, I had played this role. The broken man, the loser, the ex-husband who could not compete with his wife's wealthy boyfriend. Today, the performance would end. My phone buzzed. A text from Kenneth. Active in position. Green light confirmed. Good luck. I took a deep breath and walked out the door. It was time to get my daughter back. The chaos in courtroom 4B lasted about 7 minutes. Courtney cried out the entire time they were placing her in handcuffs. She cried out at me, cried out at the marshal, cried out at Bradley Kensington to do something. Kensington tried, objecting, demanding explanations, threatening lawsuits. But federal warrants do not care about billable hours. When they finally escorted her out, silence fell over the courtroom again. Judge Donovan took off her glasses and looked at me. Mr. Lawson, or should I say, former Special Investigator Lawson. Derek is fine, Your Honor. She observed me for a long time. I reviewed the affidavit the Federal Bureau of Investigation provided this morning. I have to say, in 23 years on the bench, I have never seen anything like it. I apologize for the disruption in your courtroom. Do not apologize. A flicker of something, admiration perhaps, crossed her face. Your ex-wife's lawyer spent the last hour telling me you were an unfit father because you work in an auto shop. Meanwhile, you were running a 3-year investigation that just took down one of the biggest money laundering operations on the East Coast. Kensington, still standing at the plaintiff's table, had turned pale. Your Honor, I had absolutely no knowledge of my client's business affairs. Keep it to yourself, counselor. You are going to have much bigger problems than this custody case once the Federal Bureau of Investigation starts looking into Horizon Marketing's legal representation. Kensington sat down heavily. Judge Donovan turned back to me. Given the circumstances, I am suspending all custody agreements pending a full review. However, based on the evidence presented today and the clear unsuitability of the mother's current living situation, I am granting you temporary emergency custody of your daughter, effective immediately. I closed my eyes. 3 years. 1,027 days of playing the fool, and now, finally, Brooke was coming home. Mr. Lawson. I opened my eyes. Yes, Your Honor? Go pick up your daughter, and the next time you come into my courtroom. She almost smiled. Don't wear whatever you want. The school was only 15 minutes away. I drove in silence, hands gripping the steering wheel tight. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by something quieter. It did not feel like a triumph. It did not feel like a victory. It felt more like finally putting down a weight I had been carrying for so long that I had forgotten what it was like to stand up straight. Greenwood Academy was everything Courtney had wanted for Brooke. Stone buildings, perfectly manicured lawns, students in pressed uniforms walking between classes. A $38,000 a year monument to the belief that money could buy your kids a better future. I parked in the visitor's lot, my 12-year-old Honda Civic standing out sharply among the BMWs and Range Rovers, and walked into the main office. I am here to pick up Brooke Lawson, I told the receptionist. I have a court order for emergency custody. Minutes later, after calls to the courthouse and verifying the paperwork, Brooke appeared in the doorway of the waiting room. She looked confused, scared. She was wearing her school uniform, plaid skirt, white blouse, the Greenwood Academy crest embroidered on her blazer. Dad, what is going on? They pulled me out of class. I stood up. Hi, sweetie. Where's Mom? She is supposed to pick me up today. I walked over to her and crouched down to her level. She was 11 now, almost 12. Not a little girl anymore, but not quite a teenager yet. Old enough to sense that something was very wrong. Brooke, I have to tell you something, and I need you to be brave. Her eyes widened. Is Mom okay? Is she hurt? She is not hurt, but she is in trouble. Trouble with the law. She did some things that were wrong, and now she has to answer for them. What kind of things? I took her hands. Do you remember when you asked me why I quit my old job? Why I started fixing cars instead? She nodded slowly. I quit because I found out that people close to us, were doing bad things, hurting people, breaking the law. I paused. Your mom was helping them, Brooke. I do not know if she understood how bad it was at first, but she was part of it. Brooke's face crumbled. No, Mom would not do that. She is not a criminal. She is my mom. I know. And she still loves you. That has not changed. Then why? Tears were streaming down her cheeks now. Why did you have to turn her in? Why could you not just let it go? I pulled her into a hug. She resisted at first, her body stiff with anger and confusion, but then she collapsed against me, sobbing. Because the truth matters, sweetie. Even when it hurts. Even when it is easier to look the other way. I stroked her hair. Your mom made choices, bad choices, and choices have consequences. But that does not mean you did anything wrong. It does not mean anyone stopped loving you. I want to see her. You will. I promise. But for now, you are coming home with me. She pulled back and looked at me. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy with tears. Your apartment is too small. Despite everything, I almost laughed. Yeah, it is. We will figure it out. I do not want to leave my school. We will talk about that, too. I do not want any of this. I know, baby. Neither do I. I stood up and took her hand. She did not pull away. Dad, yeah. Did you really work in an auto shop all this time just to catch Mom? I thought back to all those nights in my cramped apartment poring over financial records while my neighbors blasted music through the thin walls. All those days under the hoods of cars, grease on my hands, pretending to be someone I was not. Not just to catch her, I said. To protect you. To make sure that when the truth came out, you would have a safe place to land. Brooke was quiet for a moment. That is pretty cool, she finally said. I laughed. A real laugh. The first one in longer than I could remember. Do not say cool like that. You just said it. I am practically a teenager. She squeezed my hand. Sure, Dad. We walked out of Greenwood Academy together, past the stone buildings and pristine lawns, past the BMWs and Range Rovers. My Honda Civic was waiting for us in the visitor's lot, looking just as out of place as it had when I arrived. Brooke looked at it, then looked at me. We are really going to get a better car, right? Soon. I promise. I opened the passenger door for her. I promise. She climbed in, and I walked around to get behind the wheel. As I started the engine, I glanced at the Greenwood Academy sign in my rearview mirror. I thought of Courtney, sitting in a federal holding cell waiting to be processed. I thought of Philip Harrington, whose arrest had happened simultaneously in his downtown office. I thought of Bradley Kensington, who was probably already on the phone with his own lawyer. And I thought of the last 3 years. Every sacrifice, every humiliation, every moment of doubt. It had all led me here, to this exact moment. To my daughter in the passenger seat, to the truth finally out in the open, to the beginning of something new. Dad, yeah. Can we go to McDonald's? I am starving. I smiled. Yes, sweetie. We can go to McDonald's. The trials dragged on for 18 months. Philip Harrington went first. The evidence was overwhelming. $127 million in documented illegal transactions. Testimonies from cooperating witnesses. A paper trail that even his army of lawyers could not explain away. He was found guilty on 34 counts of money laundering, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The judge sentenced him to 23 years in federal prison. I was in the gallery when the verdict was read. Philip looked at me as they led him away in handcuffs. There was no arrogance left on his face, just the empty expression of a man who had no more cards to play. I did not say anything. I did not need to. Courtney's trial was harder to watch. The prosecutors offered her a deal, testify against Philip and plead guilty in exchange for reduced charges. She refused at first, convinced that Philip's lawyers would somehow get them both acquitted, that his connections would save them. They did not. By the time she finally accepted the deal, it was too late to get the best terms. She was convicted of conspiracy to commit fraud, theft of government funds, and obstruction of justice. The judge gave her 7 years. Brooke cried when I told her. Not the angry tears from that first day at Greenwood Academy, but something quieter, sadder. The tears of a child who finally understood that her mother was not who she had pretended to be. Can I visit her? Of course, as often as you want. Is she going to hate me for living with you? I pulled her close. Your mother loves you, Brooke. Whatever mistake she made, that was never a lie. And she knows this is not your fault. None of this is. It feels like it is. I know, but how we feel is not always the truth. She visited Courtney once a month. I would drive her to the correctional facility, wait in the parking lot, and drive her back. I never asked what they talked about. That stayed between them. Slowly, painfully, We rebuilt our lives. I left Jenkins Auto Repair. Paul Jenkins actually cried when I told him I was leaving. Best mechanic I ever had, he said. Even if you were some kind of secret government agent the whole time. Just an investigator, I replied. And I was not lying when I said I had liked the job. There is something honest about fixing things with your own hands. If you ever want to come back, the shop is always open. I shook his hand. I appreciate it, Paul. More than you know. I was offered my old job back at Fincian. Better, actually, a supervisory role with a significant raise. The agency was happy to have me back, especially after the Harrington case made national headlines. I turned it down. 3 years of undercover work had changed me. I did not want to spend my life in an office anymore, chasing paper trails and filling out reports. I wanted something different. I used the back pay I had accumulated during my resignation. It turns out Kenneth had quietly arranged for my salary to keep being paid, funneled through a discretionary fund, to buy a small house in a quiet neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, a backyard, a garage where I could still tinker with cars on the weekends. Nothing fancy, just what we needed. Brooke started at a public school in the fall. She complained at first. Greenwood Academy was all she had ever known. But within a month, she had made friends, joined the soccer team, and started talking about how real everything felt. Real? I asked her one night over dinner. At Greenwood, everyone was pretending all the time. Pretending to be rich, pretending to be happy, pretending to like each other. She shrugged. Here, people are just people. It is better. Yeah, I think so too. I started consulting for law enforcement agencies, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Department of Justice, occasionally the Treasury. Financial crime investigations, training programs for new agents, expert testimony in major cases. The work was flexible, well paid, and allowed me to be home every night for dinner. Kenneth Mitchell came to visit us once, about a year after the whole ordeal was over. We were sitting on the back porch, drinking beers and watching Brooke kick a soccer ball around the yard. You did something remarkable, Kenneth said. 3 years. Most people would have cracked. Most people do not have a daughter to protect. That is not the only reason. You could have blown the whistle the minute you found out, taken the easy win. But you knew it would not be enough. Philip had too many connections. The case would have disappeared. Maybe. Or maybe you just wanted to make sure there were no loopholes. Kenneth smiled. You always were meticulous. Too meticulous, according to my ex-wife. How is Courtney? I watched Brooke score an imaginary goal against an imaginary goalie. She is surviving. She started taking accounting classes. Oddly enough, she says she wants to understand what she actually did all those years. Do you believe her? I believe she wants to be better. Do you think she will really change? I shrugged. That is not up to me. And Brooke? How is she handling all this? She is resilient. Stronger than I thought. I paused. She asked me last week if I thought her mother was a bad person. What did I say? I said her mother was a person who made bad choices. That there is a difference. And that people can change if they really want to. Do you believe that? I thought of Courtney, the woman I had married, the woman I had discovered in that compromising situation with another man, the woman I had watched get escorted out of a courtroom in handcuffs. I believe in second chances, I finally answered. I believe that the worst thing you have ever done does not have to be your final act. But I also believe that forgiveness is earned, and some things take a very long time to be forgiven. Kenneth nodded slowly. That is a good answer. It is the only one I have. Brooke came running up, sweaty and smiling. Dad, did you see that goal? I saw it. Bend it like Beckham. Who is Beckham? I looked at Kenneth. I am officially old. Welcome to the club. Later that night, after Kenneth left and Brooke was asleep, I sat alone in my living room. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet I used to dread in my studio apartment, but that felt peaceful now. On the coffee table sat a framed photograph, the only one I had kept from my old life. Brooke at 3 years old, laughing at something off camera, her face lit up with joy. That little girl had no idea what was coming. No idea her parents' marriage would implode, that her mother would face serious legal consequences, that her father would spend 3 years pretending to be a loser just to protect her. But she had survived. We both had. I thought of Bradley Kensington mocking my Walmart shirt. I thought of Judge Donovan's face when she heard my name. I thought of Courtney crying out as she was escorted out of the courtroom. And I thought of the lesson all of this had taught me. People will underestimate you. They will look at your clothes, your job, your bank account, and think they know your worth. They will mock you, ignore you, write you off as a nobody. Let them, because the truth does not care about appearances. The truth does not care about designer suits, overpriced lawyers, or how much money you have in the bank. The truth waits, patient as a stone, until the moment comes to reveal itself. And when that moment comes, everything changes. Sometimes Brooke asks me if I regret it. 3 years of my life spent pretending to be broken. 3 years of changing oil, swapping out brakes, and living in a studio apartment while my ex-wife hosted dinner parties in a wealthy man's mansion. I tell her the same thing every time. I would do it again in a heartbeat. Not for revenge. Revenge is hollow. It fills you up for a moment and leaves you emptier than before. I did it for the truth. I did it because some things are more important than comfort, more important than pride, more important than what other people think of you. I did it because my daughter deserved to grow up knowing that her father would never stop fighting for her, no matter what it cost, no matter how long it took. I walked into a courtroom wearing a $12.97 shirt and let them laugh at me. I spent 3 years looking like a nobody, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal everything. And if I had to do it all over again, I would wear the exact same shirt. Comment. Hey everyone, I really hope this story resonated with you the way it did with me. I believe the most powerful thing we can do is hold on to our self-respect even when others try to tear it down. Setting clear boundaries in relationships isn't selfish. It's necessary for our peace. Being responsible for the people we love sometimes requires us to make really difficult choices. True healing begins when we stop hiding who we really are and start living with integrity. Choosing peace over revenge is one of the hardest yet most freeing decisions you can make. I want you to remember that your worth is never determined by what someone else thinks of you. No matter how long it takes, staying true to your values always leads to something better. Take a moment today to think about what kind of parent, partner, or person you want to be. I'm rooting for every one of you to build a life filled with quiet strength and genuine love. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.